My job today, or my assignment, is to just share some God stories with you of just things that the Lord has done. So I'm going to tell a quick one here. We were at Children's Hospital, and we were actually doing a little event there to just minister to the kids and try to encourage them. And we had quite a few people from Longview come in, and we gave away guitars to the kids and just had a great time. But when we were leaving, I went downstairs and gave them my valet ticket, made sure all our guests had gone. And I'm sitting there by myself waiting on my car. And, it doesn't come, and I could see there was starting to be a little commotion over there at the valet desk. So I go over there and check on them, and I can tell that there's some concerns there. And they said they were looking, and then it'd be just a minute. So from this point, I go and sit back down. And just a few days earlier, I had listened to a man share, and he was talking about, as believers, we go through things and how we conduct ourselves as we go through them. And he says, if you're a follower of Christ, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about this. I'm a follower of Christ, and things don't happen to me, they happen for me. And so I just said a prayer, and I just said, okay, this is happening for me. And I just pray, Lord, help me not to miss the opportunity. So another few minutes goes by, and I can see more people over there. They're having chaos. There's something going on. So the manager comes over, says, just gives me an update, and for sake of time, I'm going to kind of cut to the chase. About 30 minutes later, the manager comes up, and she calls me Mr. Chinn, which is not the best sign. But she said, Mr. Chinn, she said, where were you headed when you leave here? And I told her, I said, I was headed to have lunch at North Park, do a little bit of shopping, and head to Longview. And she said, perfect. She said, we have located your vehicle, but we cannot find the keys. So if it's okay with you, we're just going to Uber you to North Park. We're going to have someone come out and rekey the car, and then we'll bring the car to you at North Park. And I thought, okay, that's great. And I was just being gracious to them the best I could, but anybody be like ready to go. But I'm just, quietly saying, Lord, just help me not to miss the opportunity. This is happening for me. So they called Uber, and the Uber driver comes and picks me up, and I get in there, and the next thing you know, I'm in a conversation with this gentleman. He was from another country, and as he drives me to North Park, and he was sincerely thinking about the things of God. He didn't really know God. He knew a bunch of religions. But anyway, so I just start sharing Jesus with him. And he asked some very sincere questions. He had really never heard the good news, even though he had heard of Jesus. And he pulls up at North Park Mall. And if you've ever had an Uber experience, it's not like they want you to pull you up where they were supposed to deliver you and hang out with you for a little while. Anyway, but he pulls up, puts the car in drive, and then he just completely, turns around as far as he can and engages me. And he's asking me questions about Christ. And for another 10 or 15, 20 more minutes, I talked to him about Jesus. I talked to him about his death, his burial, his resurrection, what that accomplished for us, the new covenant, and just the good news of Jesus Christ. And he was attentive. He was asking questions, and it was just so beautiful. And then I had a chance to, he got out of the car, and I hugged him, and or he hugged me, I guess, and prayed for him right in front of P.F. Chang's. And I prayed over him, and I just couldn't believe all of this for some lost keys. And so I go in, I order my lunch, I call my bride, I said, honey, you're just not going to believe what just happened. When we're following the Lord, he just he puts us in position to talk to people he has on his heart. And if we'll just have an ear to hear. So I'm telling her I'm so full of joy, I can't believe it. That man was pumped up and excited, and he knew he had a divine appointment. And he was going to really think on this Jesus thing. And I know it's, my job is not to save people, it's just to sow the seed. So I have no doubt that that seed's been watered multiple times since I talked to him. But the story gets even better. I go in, my phone's running low. They're going to call me when my car's being delivered to North Park. So I go into Nordstrom's, and I'm there. I'm going to have my shoes shined because I've kind of run out of my shopping. I'm not much of a shopper. But I said, hey, while I'm getting my shoes shined, would it be all right? Does anybody have a phone charger? So they plug my phone in. And when they do, a lady comes and sits down next to me. And kind of was actually, she just kind of like sat right there, like just almost in my space. We have a certain comfort level. So she sits down, and I kind of actually scoot my chair away just a little bit. And I begin to share the story with her, how things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And I shared the story about Children's Hospital and about my keys and my car and sharing with the Uber driver. And this lady was in her probably mid-70s, early to mid-70s. And she says, I have a story about children's. And she begins to share a story about how she grew up in St. Louis, and when she was like 4 or 5 years old, she was very ill, and the doctors, told her parents, you should just take her home and let her pass away at home. And they had recommended maybe going to Children's Hospital, but they told her parents, they didn't think that she could make the ride. But nonetheless, she said, now obviously Children's wasn't the same as it was back then, but she said, I did make it to Children's. I was in a room with quite a few other people. And she said, I saw a lot of younger kids pass away while they're treating me. And she goes on, and I was trying to engage her, in a conversation about the Lord. And she had told me at that point, she said 2 of her nieces are nurses. And as she talked about her recovery and so forth, I just said, hey, God had a plan for your life. And she didn't really say a lot about that. But anyway, in the end, she pulls up on her phone a picture. And she was about 6 or 7 years old. And this was when she was at Children's Hospital. And I said, you need to tell your family. And I said, God had a plan for you. And I said, your nieces, they're nurses. They need to hear these beautiful overcoming testimonies and what happened to you. And at that point, things were tough. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And tears just started rolling down her eyes. And she said, I'm going to call them tonight and tell them both. And I was just like overwhelmed with the love of God, because things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And sometimes that is so hard to digest that. When we're angry or we're discouraged or we're going through a hard time, it's so challenging on our faith. But to hear this lady tell her story and how what happened with her at Children's Hospital and how she survived, and how you have to think about this. This was almost 70 years later, and those tears were just as fresh as like she had just gotten well that day. And the realization that, she has an overcoming testimony, and that God had a plan for her life, and he was fulfilling that plan in her life even close to 70 years later. So then I called my wife again. I said, Ann, I know I was excited the first time, but you're not going to believe this one either. And, they brought my car. My phone was charged. My heart was full. And 2 lives were encouraged to follow Jesus. So to God be the glory. Our motto here at the fellowship is to daily, intentionally share Jesus. And I'll tell you, if you just ask the Lord each day, Father, put someone in my path, and then give me a witness in my spirit to share with them. I will tell you one thing. He'll put someone in your heart, he'll put someone on your path, and he'll put words in your mouth. And it will just be because you're being led by him. It's not some big presentation, just a conversation about the goodness of the Lord.